I can still smell it. That's the thing nobody tells you about fire. It's not just the heat or the light, it's the smell. 78 years later, I'm sitting in a nursing home in San Diego, and sometimes when they're cooking bacon in the kitchen, something in my brain just flips. And I'm back there. Back on that fucking island. My name is Frank Kowalski. I was 19 years old when I landed on Iwo Jima on February 19th, 1945. Private First Class, Charlie Company, 1st Battalion, 28th Marines, 5th Marine Division. I was a flamethrower operator. They called us zippo men, or torch jockeys, but mostly we didn't have a nickname because most of us didn't last long enough to earn one. Japanese snipers loved us. We were carrying 70 pounds of napalm on our backs, and when they hit that tank, well, you can imagine. I wasn't supposed to be a flamethrower operator. I trained as a rifleman at Camp Pendleton, qualified expert with the M1 Garand, thought I'd be carrying that into combat. But 2 weeks before we shipped out, our company lost 3 flame operators during training exercises. One guy had a panic attack and refused to touch the equipment. Another broke his leg. The third one, Johnson, I think his name was, he just disappeared one night, went AWOL. Can't say I blamed him after I learned what the job actually was. Sergeant Castellano pulled me aside one morning. He was this short Italian guy from Brooklyn, built like a fire hydrant, had already done Tarawa and Saipan. His hands shook when he lit his cigarettes, but his voice never did. "Kowalski," he said, "you got steady hands and you don't ask stupid questions. You're on the flame unit." It wasn't a question. In the Marines, nothing's ever a question. They gave me 2 days of training, 2 days to learn how to operate the M2 flamethrower, this 70-pound monster, that felt like carrying a drunk man on your back. The tank held 4 gallons of thickened gasoline. We called it napalm, though that's not exactly what it was back then. The weapon had a range of about 20 to 40 yards on a good day, less if there was wind. You got about 8 seconds of continuous fire, maybe 10 short bursts. That's it. 8 seconds to do your job before you're carrying dead weight, and everyone around you is wondering why you're still alive. The thing they teach you first is how to light it. You pump the pressure, flip the safety, and squeeze the trigger. A small pilot flame ignites at the nozzle, and then when you really squeeze, the fuel comes out in this thick stream that catches fire as it leaves the gun. When it works right, it's like a dragon's breath. When it doesn't work right, you're standing there with a fireball in your face and napalm running down your arms. The second thing they teach you, and Sergeant Castellano made sure we understood this, is that you never, ever stop moving. You light up a position, you move. You clear a bunker, you move. You so much as fart, you fucking move. The Japs see that flame and every gun on that island is going to be looking for you. You're not just a target, Kowalski. You're the target everyone wants to hit. I practiced on mock-ups of Japanese bunkers, concrete structures with narrow firing slits, reinforced with logs and dirt. You had to get close enough to stick the nozzle right up to that opening, and then you gave it everything you had. The flame would shoot inside, fill the space, consume all the oxygen. If the defenders didn't burn, they suffocated. Either way, they stopped shooting. We loaded onto the USS Missoula, an attack transport on January 27th. 3 weeks at sea, packed in with 5,000 other Marines, all of us knowing where we were going, but not exactly what we'd find when we got there. The guys who'd been at Tarawa or Peleliu, they had this look, this 1,000-yard stare even before we hit the beach. They didn't talk much about what was coming, but you could see it in how they checked their gear, how they wrote letters home like they were carving their names on a tombstone. I spent those 3 weeks trying not to think about the flamethrower. I cleaned my rifle, played cards, wrote letters to my mother in Chicago telling her I was doing great, that the Marines were taking good care of me, that she shouldn't worry. All lies, of course. I was terrified. The M2 flamethrower sat in the hold with the rest of the equipment, and every time I walked past it, I felt this cold weight in my stomach. There was another flame operator in our company, a guy named Eddie Garcia from El Paso. He was 23, which made him practically ancient to us. Eddie had worked as a welder before the war, so they figured he understood fire, could handle the equipment. He tried to give me advice during the voyage. "The trick is not to think about what you're doing," he said one night, both of us smoking on the deck looking at the stars. "You think about it, you'll freeze up. You just do the job, follow orders, and try to make it to tomorrow. "What if I can't?" I asked him. Eddie looked at me for a long time. "Then you die," he said. "Or worse, you live, and someone else dies because you froze. So you don't freeze. You just don't." February 19th came up cold and grey. We could see the island from the ship, this ugly brown rock sticking out of the Pacific, Mount Suribachi rising up on the south end like a broken tooth. The Navy had been shelling it for 3 days straight, battleships and cruisers pounding the island around the clock. We could hear the explosions even from miles out, see the smoke rising. The officers told us the bombardment had destroyed the Japanese defenses, that we'd walk ashore with minimal resistance. They were wrong. They were so fucking wrong. I went over the side at 0900 hours, climbed down the cargo net into a Higgins boat with 39 other Marines. The sea was rough, waves slamming against the boat, cold spray soaking us. I had the flamethrower strapped to my back, my rifle slung across my chest, 2 extra tanks of napalm in my pack. I weighed about 140 pounds before the war. With all that gear, I was carrying almost my own body weight in equipment. The run to the beach took 20 minutes, but it felt like hours. The sound of shells passing overhead, the smell of diesel and vomit. Half the guys were seasick from the rough water. I wasn't sick, but I couldn't stop shaking. Eddie was in another boat, somewhere in the 5th wave. I wanted him there with me, wanted someone who knew what we were doing, but that's not how it works. You go where they put you. The ramp dropped, and we ran out into hell. The beach wasn't sand, it was volcanic ash. This black gritty stuff that gave way under your boots made every step feel like you were running through quicksand. Guys were slipping, falling, struggling under the weight of their gear. The Japanese weren't shooting much yet, just some scattered mortar fire, but we knew they were watching. We knew they were waiting. We pushed forward, trying to get off the beach, trying to reach the first terrace where we could find some cover. That's when the real fire started. Machine guns opened up from positions we couldn't even see, hidden in the rock, dug into the island so deep the Navy bombardment hadn't touched them. Mortars started dropping, guys were going down, screaming, calling for corpsmen. I hit the deck behind a small ridge of ash, pressed myself as flat as I could. Sergeant Castellano was yelling at us to move forward, to find the bunkers, to use the flames. But I couldn't see any bunkers. All I could see was smoke and Marines trying not to die. That first day was chaos. We gained maybe 700 yards, carved out a toehold on the beach, and lost 2,500 men doing it. I didn't use the flamethrower once. I couldn't find a target, couldn't get close enough to anything that needed burning. I spent the day carrying ammunition for the machine gunners, helping drag wounded Marines back to the beach, trying not to think about the 70 pounds of explosive fuel on my back. Night fell and we dug in. Foxholes in the black sand, 2 men to a hole taking turns on watch. I shared mine with a kid from Minnesota named Larson. He was a barman, 18 years old, kept talking about his girlfriend back home. I let him talk. It kept both of us from thinking about what was out there in the dark. "They come at night," Larson whispered around midnight. "The Japs. They infiltrate, try to get inside our lines, cut throats." My brother was at Guadalcanal. He said, "You can't sleep, you can't let your guard down for a second." I held my rifle and stared into the darkness. Somewhere out there, maybe 100 yards away, maybe closer, Japanese soldiers were dug into caves and bunkers we'd be trying to burn out tomorrow. They were looking at our positions, planning their own attacks, probably just as scared as we were. Or maybe not scared at all. The stories we'd heard about Japanese soldiers, that they'd rather die than surrender, that they thought it was honorable to charge our lines even with no chance of survival. I didn't know if any of it was true, but I was about to find out. The next morning, Sergeant Castellano found me. "Kowalski, you're up. There's a bunker complex about 50 yards north of here. 3 pillboxes, interconnected, machine gun positions. We need you to clear it." My mouth went dry. "Yes, Sergeant." He assigned me a 5-man fire team, 2 riflemen to cover my flanks, a barman for suppressing fire, and a demolition guy with satchel charges in case the flame didn't do the job. We moved out at 800, crawling through the ash on our bellies, trying to use what little cover the terrain provided. I saw the first pillbox after about 20 minutes of crawling. It was built into a rocky outcrop, reinforced concrete, a narrow firing slit facing our lines. As we watched, a machine gun opened up from that slit, raking the beach behind us. Marines scattered, dove for cover. "That's your target," said Corporal Davis, the team leader. "Get up there and cook 'em." My hands were shaking as I unstrapped the flamethrower, checked the pressure gauge, flipped the safety off. One of the riflemen, a guy named Peterson, was supposed to throw smoke grenades to cover my approach. The other rifleman, Martinez, would put rounds through that firing slit to keep the Japanese inside from shooting me while I got close. "On 3, Davis said. 1, 2, 3. Peterson threw the smoke. Martinez opened fire. I ran. 70 pounds of gear, soft volcanic sand, 50 yards uphill. I was gasping for air after 20 feet, my legs burning, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. If I stopped, I was dead. Martinez kept firing, and I could hear rounds cracking past me. Japanese return fire looking for a target they couldn't quite see through the smoke. I reached the pillbox, pressed myself against the concrete next to the firing slit. I could hear voices inside, Japanese voices shouting. I could smell them, sweat and gun oil and something else, something human. I stuck the nozzle up to the firing slit and squeezed the trigger. The flame shot out, this thick orange rope of fire that disappeared into the darkness of the bunker. I held the trigger for 3 seconds, 4, 5, dumping liquid fire into that confined space. The voices inside changed from shouts to screams, high-pitched and desperate, and then suddenly stopped. The smell hit me then. Burning meat, burning hair, burning everything. It was like someone had left a roast in the oven for a week and then threw gasoline on it. I stumbled back from the pillbox, gagging, trying not to vomit. "Kowalski, move," Davis was yelling. "Second position, 50 yards east." I moved. That was the job. You don't think, you just move. We cleared 3 pillboxes that morning. Same routine each time. Smoke, suppressing fire, get close, burn them out. By the 3rd bunker, I'd stopped shaking. My hands were steady on the trigger. My mind had... I don't know how to describe it. It was like part of my brain just shut down, went somewhere else. The part that thought about the men inside those bunkers, the part that imagined their last moments, the part that was still human. That part went away, and what was left was just a machine that pointed the nozzle and squeezed the trigger. Eddie found me that afternoon. He'd been clearing bunkers on the other side of the company sector, had used up 3 full tanks of napalm. His face was black with soot, his eyes red from the smoke. We sat together in a shell crater, sharing a canteen of water that tasted like sulfur. "It gets easier," he said. "Does it?" He didn't answer right away. "No," he finally said, "but you get used to it, which might be worse." Over the next week, we pushed inland yard by bloody yard. The Japanese defense was brilliant and brutal. They'd spent months turning Iwo Jima into a fortress, with miles of tunnels connecting hundreds of bunkers and caves. You'd clear a position, think it was secure, and then at night, Japanese soldiers would emerge from a hidden entrance and attack from behind. It was like fighting ghosts. The flamethrower became my whole world. Wake up, check the equipment, load a fresh tank, go burn men out of holes in the ground, come back, reload, go again. I stopped learning names of the Marines around me because they died too fast. I stopped writing letters home because I didn't know what to say. I stopped thinking about after the war because I was pretty sure there wasn't going to be an after the war. Not for me. March 1st, we were part of the push toward Motoyama Airfield No. 2. The fighting was intense, Japanese defenders contesting every inch. Our company had been reduced to maybe half strength, dead, wounded, or so shell-shocked they couldn't function. I'd gone through 4 assistant flame operators, guys assigned to carry extra fuel tanks for me. The first one took a sniper round to the head 3 hours into his first day. The second one stepped on a landmine. The third one just disappeared during a firefight, and I never found out what happened to him. The fourth one, a replacement who'd arrived just 2 days earlier, lasted about 6 hours before shrapnel from a mortar took off his arm. I was running low on fuel, had maybe 1 good burst left in my tank, when Sergeant Castellano found me. He looked like he'd aged 20 years in 2 weeks. "Kowalski, CP needs you. There's a situation." The command post was a crater about 30 yards back from the front line, reinforced with sandbags and ammo boxes. Lieutenant Morrison was there, studying a map, his face grim. Morrison was regular Army, had been commissioned from OCS, was trying his best, but you could tell this wasn't what he'd expected when he signed up. "Private Kowalski," he said, not looking up from the map. We've got intelligence that the Japanese are massing for a counterattack tonight. A big one. They're going to try to push us back to the beach, cut our supply lines. Division wants all flame operators on standby, ready to reinforce wherever they hit. Yes, sir, I said. You're going to be assigned to defensive positions along our perimeter. If they break through anywhere, you respond immediately. Understood? Yes, sir. He finally looked at me. Son, if they come in force, it's going to be bad. Really bad. You do whatever you have to do to hold that line. That night they moved me to a position near what we were calling the Hot Gates, a narrow passage between two rocky ridges that led straight into our rear area. It was an obvious avenue of approach, which meant the Japanese would definitely use it. They assigned me 2 riflemen, a machine gun team with a .30 caliber Browning and a mortar crew. Our job was simple. Nothing gets through. We dug in as best we could in the rocky ground, set up overlapping fields of fire. The machine gunners positioned their gun to cover the approach directly. The mortar crew set up about 20 yards back, ready to drop rounds on pre-plotted positions. I was front and center with the flamethrower, a fresh tank strapped on, spare tanks within reach. Night fell and the island went quiet. Too quiet. We could hear the wind, the distant sound of waves, our own breathing. No gunfire, no mortars, nothing. It was like the whole island was holding its breath. "They're coming tonight," whispered Johnson, one of the riflemen with me. "I can feel it." I could feel it too. There was this electricity in the air, this tension that made your skin crawl. Around 0200 hours, we started hearing sounds, rustling, movement, somewhere out in the darkness beyond our positions. The machine gunner tensed, finger on the trigger, waiting for orders to fire. But you don't shoot at sounds. You wait for targets. And then, we saw them. They came out of the darkness like a wave, dozens of them, maybe 100, screaming banzai at the top of their lungs. Japanese soldiers in a full charge, rifles with bayonets fixed, some carrying swords, running straight at our positions. It wasn't a tactical advance. It was a human tsunami designed to overwhelm us through sheer numbers and shock. The machine gun opened up first, tracer rounds lighting up the night, cutting down the first ranks of attackers. The riflemen fired as fast as they could work their bolts. The mortar crew started dropping rounds, explosions blooming in the darkness. But they kept coming, kept screaming, kept charging. They got closer, 30 yards, 20. I could see their faces now, twisted in fury or determination or maybe just acceptance of death. Young faces, old faces, some barely looked older than me. "Kowalski now," someone was screaming. "Maybe Sergeant Castellano, maybe God himself. I don't know." I squeezed the trigger. The flame shot out, a horizontal column of fire 20 yards long, sweeping left to right across the approach. Men ran into it, were consumed by it, became it. The napalm stuck to them, kept burning even as they fell, turned them into human torches that stumbled and thrashed and died still burning. The screaming changed. It wasn't battle cries anymore. It was agony, pure and simple, men burning alive, cooking inside their own uniforms. Some tried to run back into the darkness. Some just fell where they stood. Some kept coming even as they burned, got within 10 yards before rifle fire finally dropped them. I swept the flame back and forth, emptying the tank, my hands steady even as my mind was screaming. When the fuel ran out, I dropped the empty tank and grabbed a spare, my hands moving on autopilot, muscle memory from training. Fuel line disconnected, new tank connected, pressure pump. Light the pilot flame, squeeze the trigger. More fire, more burning men, more screaming. The charge broke. The survivors fell back into the darkness, dragging their wounded, leaving their dead. The machine gun kept firing into the darkness, short controlled bursts. The riflemen reloaded, hands shaking, some of them crying. And then it was quiet again, except for the sound of flames still burning, and men dying slowly in the dark. Dawn came up grey and cold. We could see the killing ground in front of our position, bodies everywhere, burned and shot, twisted in the positions they'd died in. The smell was unbearable, burned meat and sulphur and cordite and death. Some of the bodies were still smoking. Corpsmen came up with stretchers, started checking for survivors. There weren't many. The flamethrower doesn't leave survivors, not usually. We'd killed maybe 60 Japanese soldiers in that charge. I personally had burned at least 30 of them. I knew this because I counted the bodies in front of my position, counted the ones that were charred black versus the ones that had been shot. Sergeant Castellano found me sitting in my foxhole, still holding the flamethrower, staring at nothing. "You did good, Kowalski," he said. "You held the line." I didn't answer. What was there to say? Eddie came by around noon. He'd been at a different position, had fought off his own attack. We sat together again, not talking, just smoking cigarettes and staring at the black sand. "I can't do this anymore," I finally said. "Yeah, you can," Eddie said, "because you have to, because there's no one else to do it." He was right, of course. There was still 3 more weeks of fighting ahead of us. 3 more weeks of caves to burn, bunkers to clear, men to kill. The flamethrower became my whole identity. I wasn't Frank Kowalski anymore. I was just the flame guy, the Zippo man, the one they called when nothing else would do the job. I made it off Iwo Jima alive. A lot of Marines didn't. We lost 6,800 killed, 19,000 wounded. The Japanese lost almost their entire garrison, 22,000 men. It was one of the bloodiest battles in Marine Corps history, and I was part of it. They gave me a Bronze Star for holding that position during the night attack. I threw the medal away after the war. I didn't want it. Didn't want anything that would remind me of what I'd done. I came home in September 1945. The war was over. Japan had surrendered after the atomic bombs, and everyone was celebrating. I got off the train in Chicago, and my mother was there, crying, hugging me, telling me how proud she was. I couldn't look her in the eye. The dream started about a month later. Same dream every night. Men on fire running toward me, screaming, reaching out with burning hands. I'd wake up soaked in sweat, smelling smoke that wasn't there. The doctors at the VA called it shell shock, said it would get better with time. They lied. I tried to move on with my life. Got a job at a factory, met a girl, got married. But I couldn't hold it together. The smell of anything burning, food cooking, someone lighting a match, a car engine overheating, would trigger something in my brain. I'd be right back there, back on that black beach, back in that night with the Banzai charge. My wife left me after 5 years. I don't blame her. How do you live with someone who wakes up screaming every night, who can't explain what's wrong, who flinches at the sound of fireworks? I spent 20 years working factory jobs, drinking too much, trying to forget. It didn't work. You can't forget something like that. It's burned into you, literally, permanently. Eddie Garcia killed himself in 1953, shot himself with his service pistol, left a note that just said, "I'm sorry." I understood exactly what he meant. I thought about doing the same thing more times than I can count. The only thing that stopped me was thinking that maybe I deserved to live with what I'd done, that death would be too easy. I'm 97 years old now. Most of the Marines I served with are dead. The Japanese soldiers I killed are long dead. The war has been over for almost 80 years, but I still smell it. I still hear the screaming. I still see their faces in my dreams. People thank me for my service. They call me a hero they don't understand. There were no heroes on Iwo Jima, just scared kids trying to stay alive, following orders, doing terrible things because the alternative was dying or letting your buddies die. The flamethrower was just a tool, they told us. A weapon like any other designed to neutralize enemy positions efficiently. But there's nothing efficient about burning men alive. Nothing humane about watching them cook inside their uniforms. Nothing heroic about being the one who pulled the trigger. I did what I was ordered to do. I held my position. I kept my buddies alive. But the cost of that, the weight of those burning men, I've carried that every single day since. It doesn't get lighter. It doesn't get easier. You just learn to live with it, if you can call this living. That night at the hot gates, when the Japanese charged our position, I had a choice. I could freeze, let them overrun us, maybe die, but maybe save my soul. Or I could do my job, burn them, and live with the consequences. I chose to live. I've spent 78 years wondering if I made the right choice. There's a nursing home chaplain who comes by sometimes, asks if I want to talk, asks if I've made peace with what happened. I tell him the same thing every time. There's no peace in war, not for the ones who die, and especially not for the ones who survive. I can still smell it. Even now, even here, thousands of miles and decades away from that black beach. The smell of burning flesh, burning hair, burning men who were just following their own orders, fighting for their own country, probably just as scared as we were. They gave me a Bronze Star for killing those men, but no one gave me anything for having to live with it afterward. That's the part they don't tell you about war. The bullets stop flying eventually. The battles end, but the war inside your head, that never stops. Never. I'll die soon. My body's giving out, organs shutting down one by one. The doctors say I might have weeks, maybe months. I'm not afraid of death. I've been afraid of a lot of things in my life, but death isn't one of them. Maybe death will finally give me what I've been looking for all these years, but I don't think so. I think even in death I'll still smell it, still hear the screaming, still see their faces burning in the darkness. That's my eternity, my punishment, my burden. I earned it that night on Iwo Jima when I turned men into ash, when I chose survival over soul, when I became something I can never stop being. My name is Frank Kowalski. I was 19 years old when I became a killer. I'm 97 now, and I've never stopped being one. The war ended in 1945, but it never ended for me. It never will.